right, so now I think what we'll do is we'll entertain comments or questions, and well, I'll ask you to go to the microphone in the center of the aisle there and give your name and address.
My name is Peter Blocker. I live at 948 Country Club of Woodbridge. I just wonder, did you take into consideration the 54 homes that are going to be taken over by the people that leave their homes here, are going to be open to sale to probably younger families with children to go to the schools in this town? Has that been considered?
I can't say we've ever studied that.
I mean, obviously, if 54 people over 55 are going to move out of their homes to your development, you're going to have 54 homes in Woodbridge available to be sold. And most likely,
That's assuming that all 54 of our buyers are from Woodbridge. So, but it's a point. Absolutely.
yes. Thank you.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Sheila McCaffrey, 63 Center Road. I serve on the Woodbridge Board of Education. I think that's a very good question to ask, because that's one of the prime objectives, is to retain the quality of the school system by kind of controlling the enrollment there. And I can tell you that the school district does, I think, every year get an update on enrollment projections. And the statistician creates a report. I think the Board of Selectmen received a copy of it when Dr. Sullivan came to your last meeting. The statistician does look at home sales, historic home sales, looks at other communities like us, takes into consideration, I think he has a count of every bedroom in the town. So he knows the houses that are built with a certain number of bedrooms, and he has a projection in the formula that says turnover. So I don't know if this changes that turnover, or whether an aging population, which I know he is taking account of, is going to naturally turn over those homes in one way or the other. So I do know that the question is looked at from the school district side. Just want to add.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Hi, Leland Lawrence, I live at 17 Vernon Court. If I may, I'd like to ask a couple of questions of the fellows from Toll Brothers. I've actually a builder and I've been a developer in the past, and I've watched fairly carefully Toll Brothers since 2002, because they're not just a home builder, they're the largest, most successful, slickest home builder in the United States. They're also the most financially strong developer. If I may, how many potential housing lots do you control in the United States right now? This is important because I want everybody to understand, if we're going to be partners with this developer, who they are and what our abilities will be able to negotiate with them.
Please use the microphone.
Yes.
Just be a little louder, please.
I'm asking how many parcels of land you control to develop.
I'm not really sure. As I said, I'm responsible for operations in New England, and so what happens in other parts of the country.
It's about 80,000 according to recent information. What is the average amount of time it takes you from time of deposit to bring a project out of the ground for your first sale?
You mean when somebody deposits to purchase a home from us?
When you make a $50,000 deposit, for instance, on this project, which is not determined at this point, how many years will it take you before your first unit, on average, with all your projects in the United States, before your first building is up for sale?
Well, obviously, a big component in that is the approval timeline. We have to get approved from.
I'd say on average.
On average, I would say 1 to 2 years, on average.
According to Bob Toll in his interview in 2009, he said 5 to 7 years. That's very important to know. We may not see a house for as much as 5 to 7 years.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Was he referring to everything nationally? Because again, my perspective is just Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island. So I have that in my head. And I would say, from my experience, 1 to 2 years.
I'm just saying it's a national average, and I know in Massachusetts there have been some slow ones, and even in Connecticut here you've had some slow ones. How much cash do you guys have on hand now? How strong are you cash-wise?
We have, I think, about $700 million in cash and about $1.3 billion of credit lines. So effectively, we're close to about $2 billion in cash, effectively.
About $2.9 billion, according to an article I read a few months ago.
I don't think it's that.
Maybe not as much. Actually, it's dropped significantly since 2007. The Jersey City Powerhouse Arts District. How many years were you in litigation with the township on that project?
I couldn't tell you.
About 2 years. And
Okay.
when the project was finished, what was your change in the zoning regulations? And I know you probably don't know. So
I don't know.
The zoning heights were changed by 3 times the amount, and the density was increased by twice. The reason I make these comments is that Toll Brothers is in lawsuits with many different townships, and they probably lost very few of those. When we get into bed with the Toll Brothers, we have to be aware that we are talking about a small portion of land for which there will be sewer and water run to this piece, where there is no saying that after that's developed, that the rest of the golf course couldn't be purchased for other uses. We need to be very careful about that. I would also agree with the comment about 55 and over. This is something that's very hard to control legally. Who are the people that actually evict people that have kids? And secondly, the point that the number of units made available will probably have families coming in. And as you made the point, sir, 1/3 of our population is over 55. So what I would strongly recommend before we approve a project like this is that we do some studies to look at how the strain on our school systems will be. There are also other projects that the Toll Brothers are looking at, which have become public now. The plan of conservation development that was done 10 years ago, we called for focusing development on the village district, down where 63 and 69 converge. And one of the biggest issues we have in town is traffic. So regardless, putting up, 2-car garages, say another 100 cars on the road in the mornings, even though these are, older than 55, nobody's retiring at 55 anymore. They're going to work in New Haven, they're going to work wherever. We need serious traffic studies, that'll all be part of the process. But what I'm really warning most about is that Toll Brothers does have a history of changing the game after they've started. And one perfect example is the veteran situation out of, I can't remember what it is, the cemetery and the land, which you guys actually had a deal to sell the property for $7 million. You changed the rules at the end. It went from 10-5. Because of the threat of litigation and the strength of you guys, the deal went to a $3 million more. So there's a constant. There are many articles about the Toll Brothers being not builders. Bob Toll did not go to building camp, he went to law school. And so there are many stories about litigation and problems that speak to.
Yes, ma'am?
My name is Marita Kane, and I last week's Board of Selectmen hearing on the Gulf Authority. Both the Corporation Council and First Selectmen stated that the Woodbridge Conservation Commission voted unanimously at its May 2010 meeting to support the sale of the 17-acre parcel now proposed for sale to the Toll Brothers. The statements imply that the Conservation Commission supported development of that land. I wish to state the following facts. Number one, the Conservation Commission never supported the sale of the parcel now being proposed for sale to the Toll Brothers. To the contrary, it has consistently opposed a sale to the Toll Brothers. Second, the Conservation Commission never proposed or supported the development of the 17-acre parcel by anyone. That recommendation is not included in the Country Club of Woodbridge Development Committee report or in any resolution of the Conservation Commission. That idea was conceived completely without the Conservation Commission's knowledge or participation. Third, the Conservation Commission understood the high debt load carried by town ownership of the Woodbridge Conservation Commission would jeopardize the protection of any other open space in town. It believes that some limited development could add value to the golf course and make it more desirable to a buyer. To that end, it supported limited and appropriate development of 2 parcels, one on the corner of Johnson Road and Bassett Street, and a second between Woodford Road and the Parkway. The position of the Conservation Commission has been consistently stated in no less than 6 commission meetings and 3 public hearings on the matter. The Conservation Commission believes that unless Country Club is sold and returned to tax rolls, any future preservation of key open space is in jeopardy. Knowing that the Country Club will enhance the value of the Country Club to the developer-operator who then decide how best to develop the land. It believes that the Woodbridge Town Plan of Conservation and Development should govern the type of development. The Conservation Commission is in place to safeguard the interests of the townspeople with respect to issues of open space. That is our obligation as stated by town council, town ordinance and state statute. Thank you.
Yes, my name is Dr. Michael Broderick, 5 Old Still Road. I want to kind of focus away from the Toll Brothers because I don't think they're the issue. I think the issue is the board.
You disagree with Mr. Last week? Last week.
No, I don't disagree with him. I want to make another point. My point is that the board is exposing us and our town council, Mr. Weiner, to a decision that I don't think we need to face. And this development is wrong for a lot of reasons. It's wrong because we have a plan of conservation development to set a tone to our town. The board has disregarded the people of this town that took a long time to come up with this plan of conservation development. And the idea is that we have single-family home development. No one in this room, I think, would be here in the numbers that we are if this were a single-family proposal, because it would follow what our plan of conservation development already reflects. And also, the difference may not even be significant in the amount of money because we're already talking about giving back money for this and giving back money for that. We're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars to totally disregard our zoning regulations, which were there to protect all of our single-family home interests. We had a special district, which when I was on the zoning board we created, which required both public water and public sewer, which this facility doesn't even meet those requirements. It has to be brought in, which, as the previous speaker mentioned, opens up further areas to development, which makes it harder for us to control development. And, I think that it's very disappointing that the board is coming and making us spend our evening here when they should have been thinking about what the flavor and what the atmosphere of this town is and why people moved here. And also the idea that our zoning regs now would a huge generating factor for numbers of school children because you couldn't build that many homes. So it's just really going about it in totally the wrong way. I think the board really was way off base, bringing in a developer before asking the town if they wanted such substantial change to the town plan. Why would you even think that we would want this? And I'm just disappointed that normally we have to deal with developers. Now we have to deal with our board. And you guys should be kind of ashamed of yourself. You brought in in all my 35 years of living here, there's only been one other harebrained proposal by the board that was this bad. That was moving our library into the swamp across the street. It took the town people to say no to that. And we're saying again, we don't want this. So I asked for a show of support. How many people think this proposal is crazy? How about you look
Not even 50%.
So you'll get your opportunity to vote on December 13th.
Right, I just resent that I'm wasting my time fighting our town board, which is supposed to be looking out for our interests instead of the opposite way.
I'm Paul Barrowby from Bureau Road. I've lived in Woodbridge all my life. I supported the town's purchase of the Country Club property only 2 years ago, as did the vast majority of the town residents, so it would remain as open space and not be developed. I still support ensuring the property is not developed. The whole purpose of buying the Country Club was so it wouldn't be developed. As the town has experienced in the last 2 years, after collecting revenue from the Country Club operations, the financial impact on the town's budget of preserving this open space has been minimal. I strongly urge putting a conservation easement on the property to permanently protect it so development is not a threat again. Condominiums simply do not belong in Woodbridge. They would detract from the rural nature of the town and obviously detract from our investment, the play and appeal of the golf course. There was already an age-restricted development approved for Bradley Road that seemed to have been vetted in a thoughtful manner. We don't need to push this through now. This is an ill-conceived quick fix that will change the town forever and really only benefits Toll Brothers. Clearly, this proposal has not been carefully analyzed given the recent modifications to its layout when concern about play on the golf course was raised, which should have been obvious to start with. The proposal was initiated by Toll Brothers with the goal of making money at the town's expense, and not the result of thoughtful planning by our town leaders. Preserving the open space and maintaining the character of the town should be our priority, not short-sighted fixes and Toll Brothers profits. And finally, I believe the financial projections are unrealistically optimistic and misleading. The proceeds from the sale are not going to be the $2.3 million that's been quoted, but rather closer to $1.6 million, assuming there's only 50 units built as opposed to the 58 that's been talked about. It's more realistic after the review process by various town commissions, and after the town pays for the $400,000 for moving its cell tower. It's only $1.6 million. Furthermore, the tax revenue will not be $650,000 per year, but only $400,000 per year. When the units don't sell for the $485,000 claimed by Toll Brothers, but instead sell for $350,000, which is the average price of the two Toll Brother developments cited by the representatives as being in the previous meeting as being similar, and there are pictures up of those. The Toll Brothers Regency of Prospect is priced in the upper 200s, and the Summit at Bethel is priced in the upper 300s. On average, that's $350,000 per unit, not $485,000. I think Toll Brothers is purposely misleading us so their venture appears more financially favorable to the town than it actually will be. Considering the actual sale proceeds and more realistic tax revenue, this is not a financially compelling case for condominiums in Woodbridge. Condominiums are a winning strategy for Toll Brothers, not a winning strategy for Woodbridge. I implore my fellow residents to reject Toll Brothers' proposal and preserve the character of our town.
Good evening. I don't mean to be disrespectful, but does Toll Brothers have anything significant with toll gates? Toll gates, do we make goes with toll gates? Couple of little questions on that division there of the land. Are you on the other side of the
Sir,
street?
can you just identify yourself?
Excuse me, I'm Mark Decker.
Thank you.
And while I don't live in Woodbridge, I'm a golf professional, club golf professional. And my section is from Fairfield County North through all of Connecticut and Western Mass, so therefore, government is part of your law, if you would, okay? As far as that division there, what separates the acreage from the golf course? Is it a tall driving range type of, you have it of some sort, 50 feet high?
We'd have to look at that. We haven't found that far yet.
I mean, because golfers, most of 90% slice the ball. They're going to go right to those condos there, okay? No, seriously, they do. They really do. And the fact that clubs go further today, they go 50 yards further into the woods than the homes there, okay? That's all. The other thing, though, is that, you know, the second floor business, there it is, you have seniors moving in, and this is everywhere. You didn't invent that, okay? Fieldstone buildings down the grassy hill, if you would, the road. That second floor, we have people 55 and old moving in there. What's the second floor? For kids visiting? Because otherwise, there's no need for a second floor. You see, you're saving money by moving up, but it's not in that. At any rate, that's not my point to really dig here, okay? Let me ask here, how many of you all are golfers? Are there any of you who belong to the Woodbridge Country Club beyond 20 years ago? And could you stand, please? Would you mind starting speaking? Pardon?
Sir,
What did I say?
this meeting is open to people who are eligible to vote in Woodbridge. And you said you're not a resident of Woodbridge? Are you a property owner in Woodbridge?
No, I don't think so. I lost the golf ball in the course.
Right. So, I mean, technically, I don't think you're entitled to speak.
Well, let me make one.
You know, if you have a question, then.
All right, I do. I have one question, okay? And it's under the realm of the buck stop here, okay? I'd like to speak with former club members of Woodbridge Country Club that go back 15 to 20 years ago at some sort of gathering together. Because I have two reports now that belong to the PGA of America and the USGA because of the decline of golf.
Okay, I think I'm going to ask you.
I'm very well.
If you're going to ask a question
Yes.
to one of the presenters here, then that's fine. If not, then we'll ask you to sit down.
All right, let's do that thought. That if you have belonged to the Woodbridge Country Club more than 20 years ago, please come and see me after. That's something very important to share with you. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Lois Stevens. We live at 19 Moment Road. I would like to present a completely different perspective here. I disagree with a lot of the people that spoke here. And when you talk about seniors moving into these apartments, into these buildings, and you're going to get young families moving into their homes. I don't know if anybody is aware of it, but seniors are moving out of Woodbridge now in large numbers. This is a very big favorite discussion among people of our age and younger. Where are you going to move to? Where have you looked? They're looking in a variety of places that I'm sure you're all very well aware of. They're moving out to Cheshire. They're moving to Branford. They're moving to Shelton, they're moving to, and you're losing a very large segment of the older population that moved to Woodbridge during the building boom in the 60s, the 50s, the 60s, and the 70s, that helped to build the library, that sat on the Board of Education. This is one of the few communities that does not provide for people over 55, for their seniors, who have done a great deal for this community. And seniors are moving out. They're not going to stay in Woodbridge because there's no place for them here in Woodbridge. We live on 3.5 acres. We have a house that's 5,500 square feet. It's beautiful. We've loved living here, but it's getting to the point where it's too much for us. Or not yet, not yet. My husband's done. Stand up. But pretty soon, we'll find that it's too much for us to handle. And you are losing a good part of your senior population. And if a third of the population is 55 and older, within a short time, you're going to lose that third of the population.
Good evening. My name is Donald Salato. I live at 3 Knollwood Road. I have some observations and questions. I'll begin with the request for expressions of interest that the town formulated with respect to this. With respect to this proposal. It should be noted for people who may be unaware that apparently negotiations between the town and Toll Brothers started as early as February of this year. And they included, among other things, an invitation for a site visit by certain members of boards and commissions and town officials off-site. I believe it was March 16th or something like that, to visit a Toll Brothers development. Approximately 5 or 6 months into the process, this piece of paper, this document was developed, and I'm told the town hired a fellow and paid him $6,000 to essentially come out with this invitation for development. I think it's rather noteworthy that for our $6,000, people like Toll Brothers could find out that the town has a suburban rural feel due to the large amount of single-family residences. 95% of residences are single-family, large lot residence A zoning, and abundant conservation and open space. I don't think anyone would quarrel with that. It then goes on to talk about zoning. And I'm reading from it. And we paid $6,000 for this. The site was originally zoned residential A. However, the town removed any zoning designation for as long as the town is the site owner. It is anticipated that a developer will propose a suitable multi-family, age-restricted residential zone to enable an age-restricted residential development. Now, are we developing a multi-family, age-restricted residential zone here? Because this was duly advertised in trade periodicals and other publications. Is that what we're doing? Multi-family? I guess not. More distressing is this sentence, and this came, the Board of Selectmen, I guess, hired this fellow, presumably gave him plenty of direction. The final sentence regarding zoning reads as follows. The submitter should anticipate cooperation from the town and its agencies to facilitate the creation of a suitable zone for the development. What is the only logical inference one can make when reading that? That this project has been green-lighted all the way through without any applications going forward. It is a usurpation of the sovereign rights and responsibilities of, for instance, the Town Planning and Zoning Commission. It has a chilling effect on on otherwise relatively autonomous town boards and commissions who know that not only the town fathers, but the people who appoint them to some of those boards and commissions are in favor of this. That is wrong. And we have had what amounts now to 2 free zoning applications, so to speak, expositions of this project. And that invariably carries the risk of tainting people who need to come to this with an open mind, namely members of boards and commissions. This has been wrong to have this procedure and have presentations such as this, in my opinion. And I served on the Town Plan Zoning Commission for 8 years, and I know a little bit of what it takes to bring good faith and honest discourse to complicated matters. Finally, we've had this in front of us now for a long time, this capital project request. The people in this town knew 3 years ago that there are a lot of expenses coming down the road. And for Toll Brothers who may not know about our town, it's important to have a public works facility. It's important to have a suitable police department upgrade. The soul of this town is the residents' belief in the quality of the public education that is offered and the sanctity and protection of residential neighborhoods. This project is the equivalent of dipping into your kids' college accounts to pay your bills. It's wrong. It's giving away our legacy.
Judy Cooper, 51 Brookwood Drive. Assuming nothing is done for selling this land, to any developer, what are the tax implications per household if we have a $7 million debt that we don't sell off the land?
The $7 million tax exempt debt that I showed in the first slide is approximately $500,000. So that would equate to, on say a house value of $400,000 would be $500,000 or around $200, $150, $200.
Does that include the revenue from the golf course also?
This assumes just a revenue neutral operation in the golf course. That's simply the additional taxes that would be paid.
Wait, didn't the town have revenue from the golf course the last 3 years? Did we have revenue from the golf course?
For the past 3 years, we've been paying interest only on our debt.
So we had revenue to cover some of the debt burden.
So that's the approximate range of the tax implications.
The other question I have is the clubhouse that's there. I heard you mention that it's up to $2 million to renovate it.
We have just approved at the last selectmen's meeting a study to analyze a building assessment. So I'm not sure where that figure came from, but there's an assessment that will take place, which will have more information.
Assessment on each town member, in addition to...
No, a building assessment. So we're paying a firm to come in and give us an assessment of the building and the capital needs and the infrastructure needs required. Review of the building.
My name is Sandy Stein, I live at 161 Ford Road, and I would like to commend the Board of Selectmen for bringing forward this option to the town. I think that your responsibility is to share with us what options you feel may work. It is on the town's decision to decide which way you want to go. I think that I think actually we've done a very good job with this. We successfully, as a unit, have saved a beautiful space that we call the Country Club of Woodbridge. And that was a major accomplishment for all of us. Our challenge at this point is to come up with a solid financial plan that will allow us to continue to maintain the space that we chose to preserve.
It's important to consider, while there are indeed many options of how to proceed with the Country Club of Woodbridge, we have a concrete proposal before us that requires a decision. There are many differing opinions about the direction to take, and we need to be respectful of each other and the differences in opinions. However, we cannot let those differences paralyze our ability to move forward and to make decisions. I believe that we've been presented with a very solid plan that will provide the necessary funds to pay the debt without residents incurring a greater tax burden. This plan will also provide housing options for older residents who want to remain in this community but need an alternative to their current living situation. Although we have a project approved for the village district, the owners of that property have not indicated that they are anywhere near ready to build on that site, neither the residential units or the commercial space. We need to make a decision based on the real options that are before us, and I wholeheartedly support the option that has been presented by the Board of Selectmen and Toll Brothers. I also want to read a letter from Tony Schaefer, who lives at 1 Overhill Road. The town of Woodbridge is at an important economic crossroads, and I appeal to my fellow taxpayers and citizens of Woodbridge to support the direction that our town leaders are pursuing. We were very fortunate to have acquired the Woodbridge Country Club 3 years ago and avoid the massive development that would have been possible on the entire site. Our town has been offered the opportunity to sell a very small portion of that land for 55 and older housing. The project before us is sensible in that it will have a minimal impact on the cost of running the town and will also have a minimal impact on critical open space. The land in question is secluded from the, quote, gateway to Woodbridge and has limited value for passive recreational use. To wait for a perceived better price would only cost time in which significant tax dollars could be collected. By generating up to $550,000 in annual taxes, we will both replace the taxes lost when we acquired the country club and support the reduced bond issue needed to permanently finance the golf course. This is in keeping with the original plan when the golf course was acquired. The alternative is higher taxes, even before we consider repairing Beecher Road School, renovating the police station, and building the much-needed public works building, as well as maintaining our fire department and acquiring new, more important open space. Passing this opportunity will put all of those other priorities in jeopardy. I support passage of the proposal that's been moved forward.
I'm Kathy Shufro, 9 Beecher Road. I'd like to ask the Toll Brothers representatives what he means by better citizens, the better citizens of the town buying into developments.
Well, that's a good question. All sorts of people are good citizens. What I was inferring is that the active adult, the empty nester type people, at least those that buy in our communities, are taxpayers. They're tremendous. We find they're tremendous volunteers, or they do a tremendous amount of volunteering in the community, a tremendous amount. They want to give back to the community. So I'm not implying that they're any better than anybody else. I'm just saying that those type of people tend to want to give back more to the community because they have the time and they feel somewhat of an obligation to do that.
Thank you. I'm not yet retired. In fact, I feel very pressured by the demands of making a living, taking care of my daily chores and so on. I'm not addressing this to you, I'm addressing this to the group. But I do try to be one of those better citizens, as he defines them. And I've been serving on the Conservation Commission for a number of years. And Ms. Stein mentioned something about being respectful. This administration has shown no respect for the Conservation Commission and very little respect for others who volunteer for this town. I can only speak in detail about two issues. One is several administrations ago, because public land is often very contentious, decisions are very contentious. A couple of administrations ago, I believe it was under First Selectwoman Birdwhistle, a group was formed called the Committee on Publicly Owned Property, or Commission on Publicly Owned Property. The purpose of that commission was to negotiate and mediate the kinds of disputes that come up when we make decisions about publicly owned land. To the best of my knowledge, that commission is completely dead. As far as I know, and I'm willing to be corrected, it has not met for a very, very long time. That is the group that should have been looking at this, one of the groups. The other group is the Conservation Commission. This backroom deal began in January of last year, according to the information we've been given by public officials. The Conservation Commission has never been asked to discuss it or advise on it. The Conservation Commission has been undermined right and left by the administration. When we've had valuable members who needed their terms renewed, they have not listened and not renewed them. A good example is Craig Percy. Anyone who knows him knows that he's one of the most even-handed, diplomatic, non-sectarian people in this town. He recently moved, but he was such a valuable asset to our commission. I don't want to speak personally about others, but in every instance when valuable members who have been outspoken have had their terms end, they've been released from the commission. I'm sure that my term will not be renewed. I don't care, because we're not listened to. It's just an exercise in futility. This is no longer a democratic town. Similarly with the baseball, the choice of giving the baseball field land to a group of baseball fathers who had 0 players on their team. We asked 3 times to have a public vote on that, either a special town meeting or referendum, and we've been ignored. I think it's a shame that the town that could be sort of an avatar for a democratic, citizen-run town has been taken over by a group of people who are probably all decent individuals, but have not served us as citizens. And then on a larger scale, and I'm going out on a limb saying this, but this is what I believe. People may find this a bit radical. I believe that Toll Brothers is the 1% that is running this country. And I don't want to sell, even if we do have a multi-unit housing, I don't want to sell it to a big, huge outside corporation that doesn't particularly have local interests in mind. If we did develop, there are many craftsmen in this area who could build very fine buildings if we decided to sell some of that land. Also, of course, it doesn't make sense to put a multifamily, high-density development in the middle of a low-density area. Anyone who knows anything about smart growth would know that it makes no sense. But the point is that the people who are running this town set this up with Toll Brothers 8 or 9 months before anyone else in the town, ordinary citizens, or even public officials, as I am, were informed of.
Dorothy Martino, 38 Grand Avenue, Woodbridge. We have all been aware of the capital projects requests for many years. In April, on April 28, 2011, there was a letter to the editor of the Board of Finance Chairman stating, "The club has remained operational, and Ed formed a subcommittee to look into the future of the club. It now appears that the club will remain a golf course as promised, will have no impact on taxes, In fact, it is possible that the town will eventually realize a positive revenue stream with reduced debt. That is a marvelous accomplishment. And it said we will have a slight tax decrease for the first time in decades. And we are fortunate that the town of Woodbridge has never been in better shape. So why then, since April, has this all occurred that we suddenly have to sell that land because we need these finances?
As I stated at the last meeting, when I wrote the letter that Dorothy is referring to, we were in serious negotiation with NDN Golf, the current operator of the club. And at that time, we had a proposal on the table to sign a long-term 20-year lease, which would in fact pay the entire debt and result in a positive cash flow. However, due to a legal opinion by a bankruptcy expert, if we sign this deal and the operator filed bankruptcy, the bankruptcy court would have the right to reduce the value of the property down to $3.5 million or $3 million or whatever, and we would be stuck with the debt service on it. So at the time I wrote the letter, I think everybody here remembers that, we were ready to, we were, as I said at the previous two meetings, we would be happy to sell this to somebody for $7 million, let them run it and get us out of the golf business and get us out of the land business. But unfortunately, legalities prevent us from doing that. As long as I'm up here, my name is Matt Giglietti, 14 Rankin Road. The golf course, the country club that we purchased, don't be fooled by the fact that if we fund this bond issue by ourselves, as Tony said, it would cost the average taxpayer $200. That's not really true. That would take care of the debt service. We then would have the responsibility of running a golf course, or trying to get somebody to run a golf course, and to take into account this clubhouse, which by all accounts and by everything we've heard, is in terrible shape. So we would have no revenue whatsoever coming in from this property, and we would have to run the golf course and worry about that clubhouse. From what I heard at a meeting recently, this past year, there were approximately 20,000 rounds of golf played at Woodbridge Country Club. And that is not nearly enough at $60 a round to fund this operation. So the taxpayers of Woodbridge would be responsible for the debt service and the ongoing costs of carrying that property, which, believe me, will be significant.
But if you were aware of all this, as you said you started in March to try to sell the land, why did this letter come out saying we were in such good shape?
At that point, if we had...
Use the microphone, please. Microphone, please.
If the deal we were contemplating that we were going to sign with NDN Golf had gone through without any problems, we would have been in good shape. There was a discussion about bankruptcy, and we weren't concerned about it because if 3 or 4 years into the project, or into the contract, the operator filed bankruptcy, we just thought we could take the property back and we'd be no worse off. But a very prominent bankruptcy attorney told us otherwise, and we would be stuck with a $3.5 million loss on the property, which is why we didn't sign it. We would have signed that deal, believe me. We would have signed it and we would have paid for this property and had a surplus besides, but legalities kept us from doing that.
Matt, couldn't you get some kind of performance bond so if that happened, we would be responsible?
I don't believe you yet.
Thank you.
No. Hi. Amy Morello, 184 Redwood Road. I have a couple of questions. The first is for the legal counsel for the town. Once the Tell Brothers owns it under this current proposal, are they free to sell it to somebody else?
At present, the details of the deed have not been worked out. Certainly there will be some kind of restriction on the property to keep it as an age-restricted use on that property. I don't contemplate that it would be restricted from being sold by Toll Brothers to somebody else. And actually, they would be selling the specific homes to people. It's
Well,
not
I'm
their
not
ownership.
getting there. I'm getting there that the land is sold to them. You put on restricted, but could it be sold by somebody and under the town's current vulnerability under the Affordable Housing Act? Could somebody flip it and say that it would be affordable housing? That's my specific question.
Well,
Notwithstanding whatever you might put on.
well, no, there has to be a restriction on the land. David went through there and told us when we required to build what they're promising to build. So that would be both contractual and on the deed that's being conveyed to them.
Okay. So those two things together are what the town is depending on in terms of the land not being sold for other future use. Maybe I should ask town council that question.
Well, my point being is that if your question is could it be sold to another entity,
Yes.
I would seem to me that it could be sold to a different entity, but there's restriction on the property in terms of what it can be used for and what has to be built there. Okay.
Then I have another question for the board of selectmen. We heard about a proposal a few months ago to sell or lease the golf course, and now you're talking about 17 acres or so. Would the golf course as a whole be worth more if the development was potentially included, so that if the town, in the next step of what seems to be a multi-step process contemplated by this board of selectmen, figures out what the heck we're doing with the golf course, if we then figure out with the golf course, well, gee, as Matt Giglietti said, we don't want to run it long-term either, wouldn't the golf course have more value if somebody could come in and build condos themselves, as opposed to having given that added value to a prior purchaser?
Well, I think what you're saying is that the golf course would be sold with a conservation restriction.
I'm assuming there would be a limited opportunity.
And I think the market...
You're selling off a piece of what is ultimately a very large scale land. You're making a decision about that land. And somebody who comes in here is going to be able to work out the whole thing in terms of what the town wants and what ultimately will work for some future purchaser of the golf course itself.
Well, in regard to the purchase of the golf course, to my understanding, it surely would be the intent. I think of the Board of Selectmen that if any sale of that golf course were to take place, it would be with a conservation restriction, to keep it as open space. And I don't...
No, that's not my question, Ed. My question is, you've got a large parcel of land, you have a contemplation, at least by this Board of Selectmen, that there should be some development associated with that piece of land. Wouldn't there potentially be more value in selling the large parcel of land whole, as opposed to piecemealing purchases of it?
Well, we try to...
The value, presumably, from the Toll Brothers' perspective, is just go out there, they don't have to run the golf course. The people who are buying those condos do not have to pay for the maintenance of the golf course right now, other than any other citizen here who isn't going to be sitting right on the water.
We tried to do that in September of 2010. We had a request for proposal, which included the possible sale of the golf course. We had one person respond, and that was Mr. Manchetti, and he is in no position to buy the golf course. So, given the state of the record, that's where we are. So here's the reality.
And in the state of the record, have you ever gone to townspeople and laid out all of these different proposals, including the option, and before you have a purchaser, talk to them about what might be done? I mean, I'm very sympathetic to the notion that we need some kind of opportunity for different housing in our town. I guess what ultimately I'm saying and indicating is, I think this whole process has been backwards. I think our town is divided because we haven't had the opportunity to have the extensive discussion that we need to have about what is the future of the Country Club of Woodbridge, taking into account the needs assessment for the building, taking into account what development might have to be associated with conservation restrictions on the large part of the property. It just strikes me that you tried one thing, you tried another thing, but you never come and said, you know, these are all the options you can think of, what do you think? And gone to the boards and commissions, the process that exists in our town, to vet all these options through the process.
Well, we did that. As I said to you before. In September 2010, including we went out with an expression of interest for these 17 acres here. The only interest in this is from Colebrook.
You went out to developers, you didn't come out to the townspeople.
Well, we have a proposal on the table, and that's what we're asking you to either vote yes or no on.
What I was suggesting
We've been down.
I'm one vote here, but I will tell you I will vote against this because I think we have to have a further conversation. I think I'm very much in support of the needs of many people who want to have an option for something other than the typical suburban home. I'm also very conscious of the fact that we have a law that now requires that we have a certain percentage of affordable housing. We don't need that. I actually think we should do more for affordable housing than we did on Lucy Street. But we need to have a conversation as a town, not an up or down vote. And because I think this is presented to us without that conversation, I'm going to vote no. Thank you very much.
Good evening, my name is Alan Schlesinger. I live at 31 Bellevue Drive. I came here this evening undecided. I have not run your way. I just wanted some information before I make a logical and sound decision on this. I do have a few questions. The first question is, I really don't see, from a fairness standpoint, the relevance of a capital project request. I mean, that should be a separate issue about where the town is going forward economically, the economic viability of the town in the future, the dampening effect of what I consider a high tax rate already in Woodbridge compared to some other surrounding towns. And I really don't think that there should be any influence. I don't know, I wasn't here earlier, I don't know if I put the slide up, but I just don't think it's relevant in this particular conversation, especially where we're talking pennies compared to dollars as far as what we achieve on this property versus the capital project request. But I had a couple of questions. I don't know if anyone on the board can answer it, yourself, Mr. First Selectman. Does anyone know how many units are for sale right now in Woodbridge and how many have been for sale, you know, on average for the last few years?
You say units, you mean homes? Oh, no. I don't know the answer to that.
You know, that's okay. I'm wondering though, if 55 units being put on the house, I realize it won't be put on all at once, but we have a very depressed real estate market right now in the country, and especially here in this area. Again, as I mentioned earlier, the tax rate in Woodbridge is relatively high, and it has a dampening effect, especially on the more expensive homes. For example, my home has a tax rate of $19,000 right now, which when I tell people in the surrounding town that amount of money that I pay here in Woodbridge, they can't believe it, they think I'm lying to them. But it is the truth, and it makes it very difficult as it is already to sell homes. My concern is, again, I am undecided, I may be voting for it, but I think right now it's halfway. But my concern is putting all these extra units of housing stock on the market in a depressed market, even though it may take a few years to get this up and running. I wonder what effect that's going to have, especially for a lot of the people that are moving into these units and becoming other Woodbridge housing units, which means they will be putting their units up for sale to move into these units. And I realize some of the people may come from other areas or other states, but primarily we think it would be Woodbridge residents, right? And so I'm worried about that showing the fact. I think we should analyze how many units sell in Woodbridge as it is. And then I think we need really to have some serious discussions, and this is for the Board of Selectmen, the Finance Director, and the Finance Committee. We really need to have some serious discussions on where this town is moving forward economically and the viability of going forward, because I'm really concerned that Woodbridge is going to price itself out of the market and we're going to have some severe economic times in the future. So those are some of my concerns that I'd like to vent. And I think one other thing, and maybe the town council can answer this, I've had some experience with covenants on land in the past as an attorney, and I have found that there are ways of getting around it, especially, for example, if someone dies holding one of these respective units, and they have children that are under 55, and they may have grandchildren that are in the school system, isn't it true that they may be able to inherit it, and then they would be able to live in that unit if they are direct descendant, even if the covenant is on the property?
I don't know the specific answer to that question. The only thing I know that fact of life for Connecticut and any surrounding community. Everybody goes into it relying on the fact that it will be maintained as age restricted. I don't know the case, I don't know the situation, perhaps you know. As is true in the law, it's always possible that something can happen, even though you have the best plans, and the best system, and the best legal advice. But this is a type of housing that is here to stay, I think. And more communities are doing it over and over again, relying on the fact that it stays age restricted.
Well, thank you. I am aware, not necessarily in Connecticut, I am aware in Florida where that problem has happened, and actually it's opened up to people under 55 and when they get married to their parents. And that does increase the student population in town. So those are some of the concerns that I have at this time. I'm still not sure how I'm going to vote on this because I'd like to see some revenue come into the town. But I have a feeling though that the revenue aspect of this is a drop in the bucket for what is needed in the next few years in Woodbridge. So I'm happy to lean against it.
Use the microphone, please.
I've heard two references to the slide. I just request maybe we should turn it off. Thank you. Okay, as I have been requested by the Republican Town Committee to read the two resolutions that we had at our last meeting in November.
You have a name and a...
I'm so sorry. My name is Allison Rossi. I live at 109 Ansonia Road. The first one is, I guess it's a moot point, it's the first resolution that was unanimously passed as the Woodbridge Republican Town Committee is opposed to the golf authority. The second resolution that was unanimously passed is the Woodbridge Republican Town Committee is opposed to the current publicized plan to sell 19 acres of Country Club of Woodbridge property to Toll Brothers and the proposed development of 50-plus residential units on that site. Further, the Woodbridge Republican Town Committee encourages the Board of Selectmen to pursue other solutions to address the $7 million exposure the town now has from the golf course purchase. This pursuit must follow a legally prescribed process that includes engaging Woodbridge boards and commissions, soliciting public comment, and adhering to the state of Connecticut statutes governing such authority. Thank you.